Open the podcast bay doors, Hal.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 162 of Welcome to Geektown. I'm your host, Kurt Onstead. I've been a proud geek all my life, being into role-playing games, board games, sci-fi, fantasy, and especially superheroes and comics. And I want to help others join me in those pursuits. But I've found that sometimes people can get overwhelmed or feel left out because they don't already have what some consider the requisite knowledge to be considered a fan. And that's where Welcome to Geektown comes in. Here you can ask your questions without feeling like a gatekeeper is calling you out for not yet being fully versed in every aspect of your new interest. It's been a little while since I continued The Replacements, an ongoing feature in which I look at the various characters who have taken over a heroic role and what happened to them when the original returned. Thanks as always to Justin B., who asked this question way back when we were just getting started. Like The Flash, this one is a little odd in that the original is not the one most people think of as the main holder of the mantle. Let's discuss Green Lantern. Well, a couple of them at least. The various Green Lanterns have such rich histories that we're going to have to split this into multiple episodes in order to keep this at a standard length. We'll be going in chronological order from their introduction. A quick reminder that almost all DC histories will use terms like pre-crisis, post-zero hour, and other delineations of time periods. If you need a refresher or are completely new to these terms, I specifically made the first episode of my show about these terms in order to have an easy reference point. You can listen to the original version or a remastered version with AI improved audio. Both are available in the podcast feed. One final note is that Green Lantern was one of the few titles that was not completely retconned by the New 52. As such, I will discuss the history as one flowing story with notes where needed of how the New 52 slightly altered things. Now, as I mentioned, the original bearer of the Green Lantern title is not the one that first comes to mind for most superhero fans, but we'll start with him. Alan Scott was created by Martin Nodell and Bill Finger and was first seen in All-American Comics number 16, cover dated July 1940. A young engineer who helped design and build a new railroad bridge, Alan was on the train for its inaugural trip across the span. However, the bridge had been sabotaged by a rival engineering company, and Alan was the only survivor, thanks to the magic of the Green Lantern that happened to be there. Long story short, the Green Lantern was a magical meteor that had fallen to Earth centuries before and had been shaped into this form later. With the Lantern's powers, Alan was able to get revenge on the saboteurs and start his crime-fighting adventures. The original Green Lantern was a founding member of the Justice Society of America and was the second chairman of the group. His adventures continued throughout the 40s, but in the early 50s, the first superhero boom died off, and he fell into comic book limbo. When the next Green Lantern came about, we soon learned that Alan's adventures took place on Earth 2, while the new GL stories were on Earth 1. That new Green Lantern is the one most people have in their heads if they're only familiar with one iteration of the character. Hal Jordan, ace test pilot for Ferris Air, was testing in a simulator when suddenly the device was ripped out and pulled to the crash site of an alien spacecraft. The dying alien inside, named Abin Sur, had his ring choose a fearless and honest man to be the new Green Lantern to take his place. Armed with the ring and a battery shaped like a lantern, thus the name, Hal joined the Green Lantern Corps, a sort of police force for the universe. Each of the 36 sectors is normally patrolled by one Green Lantern, expanded to 2 per sector later. Although Sector 2814, Earth sector, will eventually end up as an exception. How you split the infinite universe into a finite number of sectors without each sector also being infinite is a question for another day. The first of the replacement Green Lanterns was originally introduced in an almost what-if style story. Hal is on Oa, the home planet of the Guardians, the race that created and administers the Green Lantern rings, and is shown a device that, among other things, is able to present to him alternate timelines. He learns that there was another man who was equally qualified to be Green Lantern, but was not chosen only because Hal was closer. Hal watches what would have happened had this other man, a teacher named Gardner, had been chosen instead. As many of these imaginary stories turn out, it ends with Guy dying and Hal destined to be Green Lantern. Hal decides to meet Guy as the issue ends. We don't see Guy again until a couple of years later, when he ends up in a coma after rescuing one of his students during an earthquake. This causes the Guardians to choose a new backup for Hal, who we'll get to later. Guy eventually recovers and is trained to be a Lantern just in case. This all happens off-panel. And in Green Lantern number 116, Guy finally gets his chance to be a Lantern in earnest. Unfortunately for him, this one-issue story ends with the Lantern battery exploding in Guy's face, trapping him in the Phantom Zone. Hal and everyone else believes Guy to be dead, and when Hal goes to tell Guy's girlfriend, named Carrie Limbo, the two bond in their sorrow and end up getting engaged just 5 issues later. Hal was a bit of a womanizer in his day. Guy is able to reach out to Carrie from across the void telepathically, just in time to stop the wedding, and is rescued from the Phantom Zone. Unfortunately, all of his various traumas leave him comatose once again, which is where he was until Crisis. During the Crisis on Infinite Earths, the Guardians are split as to how to handle the Anti-Monitor and his forces. A small group of them rebel from the main group and revive and recruit Guy to lead a strike against the Anti-Monitor's home base. While the Guardians healed Guy's body, his mental state was still altered considerably. No longer the kind teacher of special education students, Guy now saw himself as the only true Green Lantern, and carried with him a new layer of bluster and machismo. It was writer Steve Englehart who gave Gardner this brusque exterior, which has mostly stayed with Guy since then, and deserves a lot of the credit for Guy as we know him today, despite being originally created by John Broome and Gil Kane, who also created Hal Jordan. This is the version of Guy that I was introduced to in the pages of Justice League International. Check out my interview with co-writer J.M. DeMatteis in episodes 146 and 147. He's named the prime Green Lantern of Sector 2814, while Hal Jordan is sent across the universe to recruit new replacements for the currently decimated Corps. Guy constantly bickers with his teammates in this book, eventually quitting the team after feeling like Superman belittles him. When Hal returns after his recruiting mission, Guy challenges Hal to a fight in order to decide who should be the wielder of the ring for the sector. Guy loses and returns his ring. He tries life as a non-powered vigilante for a bit, but is defeated handily and goes on a quest to find a new source of power. He finds it in a yellow ring, originally worn by Sinestro, with powers very similar to the Green Lantern's ring, but instead of recharging from a battery, needs to fight against Green Lantern rings in order to absorb the residual energy and restore its power. He continues using that yellow ring for a while, even as its powers start to fluctuate. However, he loses his source of power once more in a fight with Parallax, aka Hal Jordan himself, now corrupted and turned evil, who destroys the ring as well as taking out one of Guy's eyes. After recovering from the brutal fight, 3 more weeks in a coma, Guy once again searches out for a new source of power. This time, he finds it within himself. Guy discovers an ancient temple where he is apparently destined to drink from the water of the warriors. Warrior being Guy's current codename. He does so, and it unlocks the alien DNA hiding in his system from an ancient ancestor. These Voldarian genes allow Guy to shapeshift, which he mostly uses to create weapons on his body. At first, these transformations are painful, but Guy eventually learns to access them easily and painlessly. This heritage also apparently lets him, quote, use the knowledge of warriors from across space and time, end quote, but this aspect of his powers are rarely referenced. Guy's adventures with the Yellow Ring and then his alien powers were mostly chronicled in an ongoing titled Guy Gardner, renamed to Guy Gardner Warrior with issue 17. It's during this run that we fill in much of Gardner's history. Guy's father, Roland, was an abusive alcoholic. Despite this, Guy worked hard to try to win his father's approval by doing well in school, but Roland instead pays more positive attention to Guy's older brother, Mace. Eventually, Guy rebels and becomes a juvenile delinquent, but after Mace, now a police officer, straightens Guy out, he ends up at the University of Michigan, studying education and psychology while playing football for the school until an injury on the field ends any dreams of playing professionally. Guy starts out his post-college career as a social worker, but dealing with former prison inmates starts to bring out Guy's aggressive side, and he changes careers to become the teacher we meet in his first appearance. In the New 52 reboot, this was changed to Guy being an ex-police officer coming from a long line of cops serving in the Baltimore area. But the DC Rebirth Initiative re-retconned that back to his original history. While Guy kept his alien powers for a while, during the Green Lantern Rebirth miniseries that returned Hal Jordan back from the dead, also retconning his villainous period to being caused by possession, Guy has all his Voldarian DNA purged from him, and he's brought back into the Green Lantern Corps, serving as an honored guard member with special privileges, including the fact that he is not assigned to any particular sector. While Hal becomes the star of the Green Lantern title once again, Guy leads the team in the second title, Green Lanterns. During this time, he mostly stuck to missions off Earth, but did make appearances on his home planet from time to time, especially during big stories like Infinite Crisis. After the appearance of other Lantern Corps of various colors, check episode 122 for more details on that, a traumatic experience led Guy to briefly join the Red Lantern Corps, fueled by the rage he felt from that event. While he was eventually cleansed of the Red Lantern energy, he returned to the Red Lantern Corps again when asked to go undercover and keep an eye on the rival force. Guy challenged Atrocitus, the leader of the rage-filled group, and upon beating him, Guy became the new leader of the Red Lanterns for a time, using their power to actually help the galaxy in his own way. After working directly with the Green Lanterns on a mission, Hal decides to grant one of the sectors to Guy and his Corps to protect. Unfortunately, the sector given was 2814, home to Earth, and Guy declares that no Green Lanterns can enter his sector, with only new recruit Simon Baz, who we'll talk about in a future episode, allowed to stay on Earth as an ambassador between the two factions. After a brief battle against the New Gods, Guy returned to Earth to find entire cities infected with the red light of rage. Guy absorbed the energy back into himself, and after a talk with his sister, this was during the New 52 era when Guy was the middle child of 3 rather than the younger of 2, Guy was able to expel the energy and abandon the Red Ring. However, in a storyline called The Lost Army, Guy and a number of other Lanterns were suddenly and inexplicably sent across the universe to an unknown sector, and Guy showed up wearing both green and red rings. The group found a pyramid giving off rage energy, but Guy and John Stewart, we'll get to him next episode, were able to change the device's attunement to willpower instead, and defeat the aliens known as the Lightsmiths. They eventually make their way back to known space, and in a fight between the Lanterns and the Lightsmiths, Guy's red ring is turned back to green, and Guy returns once again to the Green Lantern Corps. He continues to be an upstanding member of the Corps, including time as an instructor for recruits. Though he can sometimes grate on the nerves of other Green Lanterns, especially those from his home planet, all of them consider each other friends and allies. I was expecting that I would cover 2 replacements, or maybe even more, per episode when I originally decided to cover the Green Lanterns, but talking about Guy's history went on longer than I anticipated. I think next time we'll be able to cover 2, but we'll see. In the meantime, are there any other subjects you'd like to hear covered? You can email any suggestions you have to welcome2geektown, all spelled out, @gmail.com. Or you can go to the website, welcome to, the number 2 in this case, geektown.com, and click the Submit a Question link if you prefer to remain anonymous. Other contact options include facebook.com/welcome-to-geektown, Twitter @geektownpodcast, Mastodon @welcome-to-geektown @mastodon.social, or Blue Sky @welcome-to-geektown.bluesky.social. Also, if you'd like to support the show directly, why not become a patron at patreon.com/welcome-to-geektown for just $1 per month to get access to full scripts of the shows, audio outtakes, and a monthly shoutout. You can also help the show grow by subscribing and giving a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts to join the Geektown City Council, which helps other people find the show so we can all tell them, welcome to Geektown, population, us. Welcome to Geektown is written, narrated, edited, and produced by me, Kurt Onstead. Theme music is by Aaron Levitz, logo art by Archie Santana. All other sound clips of the copyrighted material, their respective owners, and no infringement is intended, falling under fair use.